I'm Ryan Carter, 28 years old, a project manager at a tech startup in Austin, Texas. Life was finally looking good after years of grinding in a job that barely paid the bills. I'd been dating my girlfriend, Sophie Williams, for about 8 months, and things were getting serious. Sophie, 26, was a marketing specialist with a bright smile, contagious laughter, and a knack for making me feel like the luckiest man alive. Sophie was close to her family, or so I thought. She talked fondly about her father, Greg, a 55-year-old real estate developer, and her stepmom, Vanessa, 42, a self-proclaimed homemaker who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. According to Sophie, Vanessa was overbearing but harmless. But harmless would be the last word I'd use to describe her by the end of this story. It all started one Saturday evening when Vanessa invited me over for a family dinner. Sophie couldn't stop gushing about how important it was for her parents to get to know me better. "It's just dinner," she said, brushing off my nerves. I dressed in my best button-down shirt and brought a bottle of wine as a peace offering, eager to make a good impression. Vanessa greeted us at the door with an overly tight hug that lingered just a little too long. She was stunning, no doubt, but there was something about her sharp green eyes and calculated smile that sent a chill down my spine. Sophie's dad, Greg, on the other hand, was warm and welcoming, shaking my hand firmly and cracking a joke about how he hoped I could handle Vanessa's cooking. The evening started off pleasant enough. Vanessa had gone all out with the dinner, a 3-course meal complete with candles and soft jazz playing in the background. She wore a sleek black dress that seemed a bit much for a casual family dinner, but I didn't think much of it. As we sat down to eat, Vanessa's attention was unsettling. She kept asking me personal questions about my job, my hobbies, my workout routine. She'd laugh a little too hard at my jokes and touch my arm whenever she made a point. Sophie seemed oblivious, happily chatting with her dad about an upcoming project at work. Then came the wine. Vanessa kept refilling my glass, even when I politely declined. "Oh, don't be shy, Ryan," she purred, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. "A man like you deserves to unwind." By dessert, Greg excused himself to take a phone call, and Sophie went to the kitchen to help with the dishes. That's when Vanessa struck. She leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming, and whispered, "You're too good for Sophie, you know. She doesn't appreciate what she has, but I do." My stomach dropped. I tried to laugh it off, thinking I'd misheard, but then she placed her manicured hand on my thigh, her nails lightly grazing the fabric of my jeans. "I could make you happier than she ever could," she said, her lips curling into a predatory smile. I froze, my mind racing. What the hell was happening? This was Sophie's stepmom. I gently pushed her hand away and stammered, "Vanessa, I think you're mistaken. I love Sophie." Her eyes darkened, and her smile turned cold. "Oh, don't act so noble, Ryan. You think I don't see the way you've been looking at me all night?" At that moment, Sophie walked back into the dining room. Vanessa pulled her hand away and sat back, looking completely unbothered. I stared at her in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest. "Ryan, you okay?" Sophie asked, noticing my pale face. "Yeah," I muttered, forcing a smile. "Just full." But the night wasn't over. As we were getting ready to leave, Vanessa hugged me again, whispering, "Think about my offer. You know where to find me." I didn't know what to do. Should I tell Sophie? Would she even believe me? Or worse, what if Vanessa twisted the story and made it seem like I was the one coming on to her? Little did I know, this was just the tip of the iceberg. What Vanessa did next turned my world upside down, and it wasn't just about her inappropriate advances. It was about Sophie, her dad, and a secret that would change everything. The drive back to Sophie's apartment that night was suffocating. I could barely focus on the road, replaying Vanessa's words in my head. "Think about my offer. You know where to find me." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, while Sophie sat next to me, humming softly to the radio, blissfully unaware of the storm raging in my mind. "Dinner was nice, wasn't it?" she asked, turning to me with a warm smile. "Yeah," I said through clenched teeth, my voice strained. "See? I told you Vanessa can be a little extra, but she means well." I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded, deciding to keep quiet, at least for now. But I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, torn between telling Sophie the truth and keeping it to myself. The thought of blowing up her family over something that could be dismissed as a misunderstanding kept me silent. Maybe I'm overthinking it, I thought. Maybe she was just drunk and being inappropriate. But deep down, I knew better. The next day, Sophie left early for work, leaving me alone in her apartment. I decided to distract myself by going for a run, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. But as I was tying my shoes, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa. Vanessa, 803 morning. Ryan, hope you slept well. I couldn't stop thinking about you last night. Call me when you're ready to talk. My blood ran cold. I stared at the message, my heart pounding in my chest. She was doubling down. I couldn't ignore this anymore. I immediately called Sophie. Hey, babe, she answered cheerfully. What's up? Are you busy right now? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Not really. Why? I hesitated, then took a deep breath. Sophie, I need to tell you something. It's about last night. There was a pause. What about last night? It's Vanessa, I said, my voice trembling. She came on to me. Silence. Sophie? I prompted. You're kidding, right? She finally said, her voice sharp. I wish I was, I said, running a hand through my hair. She texted me this morning, Sophie. I can send you the screenshot if you don't believe me. No, she sighed. Ryan, are you sure you're not misunderstanding her? Vanessa can be flirty sometimes, but she's harmless. Flirty? Sophie, she put her hand on my thigh and told me I'm too good for you. That's not flirty, that's insane. Another pause. Okay, she said quietly. Send me the screenshot. I forwarded Vanessa's message and waited. A minute later, Sophie called me back. Ryan, I'm coming home, she said, her voice shaky. We need to talk. Sophie walked through the door an hour later, her face pale and her hands trembling. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes avoiding mine. I confronted her, she said finally. What did she say? I asked. Sophie let out a humorless laugh. She denied it, of course. Said you must have misunderstood her and that you're trying to stir up drama. My stomach sank. Sophie, you don't believe her, do you? She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. Ryan, I don't know what to believe. I love you, and I want to trust you, but this is my family we're talking about. Why would Vanessa do something like that? I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Sophie's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. It's my dad, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He wants us to come over. My heart skipped a beat. Why? She held up the phone, showing me the message. Greg, 1027 we need to talk. Family emergency. Bring Ryan. We arrived at Greg and Vanessa's house that afternoon, tension thick in the air. Greg greeted us at the door, his face grim. Vanessa stood behind him, her expression unreadable. Come in, Greg said, his voice low. We sat down in the living room, and Greg wasted no time getting to the point. I know what's going on, he said, looking directly at me. I tensed. What do you mean? Vanessa told me everything, he said, his voice shaking with anger. She said you've been making advances on her and trying to come between us. I stared at him in disbelief. That's not true. Don't lie to me, Greg snapped. She showed me the text you sent her this morning. My jaw dropped. What text? Vanessa smirked, pulling out her phone. This one. She held up the screen, and my blood boiled as I read the message. Ryan, 815 Vanessa, I can't stop thinking about you either. Let's meet soon. That's a lie, I shouted, standing up. I never sent that. She's trying to frame me. Sophie looked at me, her face a mix of confusion and pain. Ryan, is it true? No, I said, turning to her. Sophie, you've got to believe me. She's lying. Greg stood up, his face red with fury. I won't let you tear this family apart. Get out of my house, Ryan. And don't come near my daughter again. Sophie, please, I begged, turning to her. But she just stared at me, her eyes brimming with tears. I need time to think, she said quietly. I left the house feeling like my world had just collapsed. Vanessa had not only tried to seduce me but had also planted fake evidence to destroy my relationship with Sophie. But I wasn't going to let her win. I had a plan, a way to expose Vanessa for who she really was. And I was willing to do whatever it took to set things right. The days after that disastrous meeting were some of the longest of my life. Sophie wouldn't return my calls or texts. The love of my life was slipping through my fingers, and Vanessa was laughing her way into victory. But I wasn't going to let her win. I stayed up all night brainstorming, determined to expose her lies and clear my name. If she wanted to play dirty, then I'd outplay her, and I knew exactly where to start. The first step was finding proof of Vanessa's deceit. That fake text she showed Greg had been the tipping point, so I needed to figure out how she'd done it. I remembered something Sophie had once mentioned in passing. Vanessa was terrible with technology. She could barely use her phone for anything beyond basic texting and calls. Someone like her wouldn't have the skill to forge a convincing fake message on her own. So, who helped her? It didn't take long for me to come up with a suspect: Vanessa's younger brother, Paul. He was a tech-savvy guy in his early 20s, fresh out of college with a degree in computer science. He was also notoriously shady, always looking for ways to make quick money. If Vanessa had enlisted anyone to fake that text, it was him. I paid Paul an unannounced visit at his dingy apartment on the other side of town. He answered the door in sweatpants and a stained t-shirt, his eyes widening when he saw me. "Ryan," he said, trying to sound casual, "what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Paul scratched the back of his neck nervously. Sure. What's up?" I didn't bother with small talk. "Did Vanessa pay you to fake a text message from me?" His eyes darted to the side, and he laughed nervously. "What? No. Why would I do that?" "Don't lie to me, Paul," I said, my voice low and firm. "I know you helped her, and if you don't come clean, I'll make sure Sophie and Greg find out about all the other shady stuff you've been up to." Paul's face turned pale. What are you talking about? You really think I don't know about the gambling?" I said, bluffing. "Or the money you owe to those guys who are about 2 seconds away from breaking your legs?" Paul swallowed hard. "Okay, fine," he blurted out. "Vanessa paid me, all right. She said it was just a harmless prank to teach you a lesson. I didn't know it would blow up like this." I smirked. "Good. Now you're going to help me fix this." With Paul's help, I learned exactly how Vanessa had orchestrated the whole scheme. She'd given him my number and asked him to create a fake text thread using a spoofing app. Paul had then sent the doctored screenshot to Vanessa, who presented it to Greg as if it were real. I had what I needed to expose her, but I wanted more. I wanted undeniable proof that she was the manipulative, conniving liar I knew her to be. So, I set a trap. That weekend, I called Vanessa and told her I wanted to talk things over at her house. I played my part perfectly, pretending to sound defeated and remorseful. "You were right, Vanessa," I said over the phone. "I can't stop thinking about you. Maybe we should meet." She took the bait without hesitation. "Come over tonight," she purred. "Greg's out of town for a business trip. We'll have the whole place to ourselves." I hung up the phone, disgusted but determined. Before heading to Vanessa's, I stopped by Sophie's apartment. She looked surprised to see me but reluctantly let me in. "Ryan, I told you I need time," she said, crossing her arms. "I know," I said, holding up my hands in surrender. "But there's something I need to show you. Something that will prove I've been telling the truth." She raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "You'll see tonight," I said. "Just trust me, Sophie, please." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but this better be good." That evening, I arrived at Vanessa's house with a hidden camera in my pocket. I'd set my phone to record audio as well, ensuring I captured every word of our conversation. Vanessa greeted me at the door wearing a silk robe and a smug smile. "I knew you'd come around," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I forced a smile and walked inside, feeling a wave of nausea at the sight of the candles and wine she'd prepared. "Let's talk," I said, sitting down on the couch. Vanessa sat next to me, leaning in close. "There's nothing to talk about, Ryan. You know we're perfect for each other. Sophie doesn't deserve you." I gritted my teeth, fighting the urge to snap. "What about Greg?" I asked. "Don't you feel guilty about cheating on him?" She laughed. "Greg's an idiot. He's too busy with work to even notice what's going on. And honestly, he doesn't satisfy me the way you could." I felt my stomach churn, but I kept my composure. "So, this whole thing with Sophie, it doesn't bother you at all?" Vanessa shrugged. "She'll get over it. Besides, she's young. She'll find someone else." That was all I needed. I stood up abruptly, startling her. "Where are you going?" she asked, frowning. "You'll see," I said, heading for the door. "What does that mean?" she called after me, her voice panicked. I didn't answer. I met Sophie outside the house, where she'd been waiting in her car. "Did you get it?" she asked, her eyes wide with anticipation. I held up the camera. Every word. Her face hardened. "Let's end this." That night was the beginning of Vanessa's downfall, and I made sure it was as spectacular as it was humiliating. The evidence I had gathered, the recordings, the texts, and Paul's confession was more than enough to bury her. But simply exposing her wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done to me, to Sophie, and even to Greg, who didn't deserve to be stuck with someone so toxic. I spent the next few days carefully planning the perfect moment. Timing, as they say, is everything. And I wanted to ensure Vanessa's betrayal would be revealed in front of the people who mattered most to her. The perfect opportunity came when Greg and Vanessa hosted their annual charity gala at their sprawling mansion. It was a big event, attended by their wealthy friends, business partners, and even a few local journalists looking for a story. I called Greg 2 days before the gala. "Hey, Greg," I said, trying to sound casual. There was a pause on the line. "Ryan, what do you want?" "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," I said, "but there's something I need to tell you. It's about Vanessa." He sighed. "Ryan, I've heard enough of your lies. Vanessa told me everything about how you've been trying to sabotage our relationship." "That's exactly what she wants you to believe," I said. "But I have proof, Greg. Real proof, and I think you deserve to see it." Another pause, longer this time. Finally, he said, "Fine, come to the gala. But if this is some kind of stunt, I'll have security throw you out." "It won't be," I promised. The night of the gala, I arrived dressed to the nines, blending in seamlessly with the crowd of well-dressed elites. Sophie was by my side, looking stunning in a sleek black dress. She was nervous, but her resolve was unshakable. "You sure about this?" she asked as we walked up the grand staircase to the ballroom. "Absolutely," I said, gripping the USB drive in my pocket. It contained the recordings of Vanessa's confession, along with a video of Paul admitting his involvement. The ballroom was a spectacle of wealth and luxury, crystal chandeliers, live music, and tables laden with gourmet food. Vanessa was mingling with the guests, her fake smile plastered across her face. When her eyes met mine, she froze for a split second before quickly recovering. "Ryan," she said, walking over to us with Greg in tow. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to support Greg," I said, smiling, "and to clear my name." Her smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see," I said, turning to Greg. "Can I have a word with you, in private?" Greg glanced at Vanessa, who looked like she was about to explode. "All right," he said reluctantly. We stepped into a side room where I handed Greg the USB drive. "Everything you need to know is on here," I said. "Watch it, and then you decide who's been lying to you." Greg looked skeptical but inserted the drive into his laptop. As the video played, his expression shifted from confusion to shock, and finally, to fury. When it was over, he stood up abruptly. That snake," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "Now do you believe me?" I asked. He nodded, his face red with anger. "She's been lying to me this whole time. And not just to you," I said. "She's been manipulating Sophie, too. It's time we put an end to this." Greg and I returned to the ballroom, where Sophie was waiting nervously. Greg whispered something to the event coordinator, who nodded and headed for the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the coordinator said over the microphone, "we have a special announcement from our host, Greg." The room fell silent as Greg stepped onto the stage, his face a mask of calm fury. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began. "I hope you've been enjoying yourselves. But before we continue, there's something I need to share." Vanessa's face paled as Greg motioned for me to join him on stage. I took the microphone and addressed the crowd. "Some of you may have heard rumors about me," I said. "Rumors that I was trying to sabotage Greg and Vanessa's relationship. Tonight, I'm here to set the record straight." I signaled to the AV team, who played the recordings and videos on the large screens around the room. The audience watched in stunned silence as Vanessa's lies and manipulations were laid bare for everyone to see. When it was over, the room erupted in whispers and gasps. Vanessa tried to storm out, but Greg grabbed her arm. "You're not going anywhere," he said coldly. "Not until you answer for this." What followed was a scene of chaos. Vanessa tried to deny everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. Guests began to leave, muttering about how they'd never attend another event hosted by her. Sophie stood by my side, her hand in mine, as we watched Vanessa's carefully constructed world crumble around her. I had won. The fallout from that night was far worse than anything Vanessa could have imagined, and exactly what I had planned. By the next morning, word of what had happened at the gala had spread like wildfire. Social media was buzzing with clips of Vanessa's humiliation, her lies, and the confrontation between her, Greg, and me. Guests at the event had been more than happy to share their outrage with the world. The stepmom scandal, they were calling it. It was trending in our town and even made the local news. Vanessa's reputation was in ruins. Her social circle, the same people who'd praised her, envied her, and kissed up to her, turned on her almost immediately. Invitations to high-profile events stopped coming. Her charity board asked her to step down, citing the public controversy as a distraction. As for Greg, the divorce papers were filed within a week. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the gala, Greg called me. "Ryan," he said, "I wanted to thank you." I was taken aback. "Thank me? For what?" "For saving me from that viper," he said. "I've been a fool, but you opened my eyes. She's trying to fight the divorce, but my lawyers are on it. She won't get a dime." Well, I said, I didn't do it for you. I did it for Sophie, and for myself. Either way, he said, you were right. She's poison. I'm just sorry she hurt so many people along the way. I didn't know what to say, so I just muttered, take care, Greg, and hung up. Vanessa wasn't taking things lying down. She tried everything to claw her way back, apologizing to Greg, to Sophie, even to me. She sent letters, emails, and texts, begging for another chance, claiming she'd learned her lesson. One day, she showed up at my door. Ryan, she said, her voice trembling. Please, can we talk? I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. There's nothing to talk about, Vanessa. Her eyes filled with tears. I've lost everything, she said. Greg, my friends, my reputation. I don't even know who I am anymore. That's not my problem, I said coldly. You made your bed. Now lie in it. She tried to step closer, but I held up a hand. Stay away from me, and stay away from Sophie. Vanessa broke down, sobbing on my front porch, but I didn't let her inside. I closed the door and walked away, leaving her to deal with the mess she'd created. Sophie, on the other hand, was thriving. With Vanessa out of the picture, she seemed lighter, freer. She started therapy to work through the years of manipulation and gaslighting she'd endured. She moved into her own apartment and began focusing on her art again, something Vanessa had always dismissed as a waste of time. One evening, as we sat on her tiny balcony overlooking the city, she turned to me and said, "Thank you, Ryan, for everything." I smiled. "You don't have to thank me, Sophie. I just wanted you to see the truth." She shook her head. "It's more than that. You stood by me when no one else did. You believed me when I didn't even believe in myself. That means everything." As for me, I finally felt at peace. The anger, the betrayal, the humiliation, they no longer weighed me down. I had confronted my demons, exposed the truth, and come out stronger on the other side. Vanessa's downfall wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. And as I sat there with Sophie, the city lights twinkling in the distance, I knew I had done the right thing. Vanessa may have tried to tear us down, but in the end, she only destroyed herself.